Howdy everybody, welcome to this new Python tutorial. My name is Cameron and today we're going to be talking about functions and what they are, how they're useful, and then we'll be using some functions to type some words and numbers into the console to see how Python interacts with them a bit differently. So first of all, what is a function? Really, a function is pre-written code that someone else has typed for us that does a specific action. And the purpose of them is basically just to make our code really efficient and shorten the amount of code that we need to type and make it easy to read. One of the functions we'll be working with in a second is called the print function, which basically tells the computer, hey, type whatever is in this function here, or in these parentheses. And then the computer's going to run that code, it's going to find all the files that it needs to look for, and then run the code that it needs to, and then it's going to execute that into our console over here. But like I said, functions are super useful. Basically everywhere in pretty much almost every language there is some form of function, and like I said, it just makes your coding or your files much more efficient. So to start off, we're going to talk about words and numbers. Words and numbers in Python are the same as words and numbers in pretty much everything else in life. They just interact with Python a bit differently. To start off, we're going to print the traditional hello world that we learn in pretty much every whenever someone's learning a new language, we always type hello world to the computer as our first line of code. So to do that, we're going to say the print function, or we're going to call the print function. And to do that, we're going to say in all lowercase, just print. And as you can see, it's a function because it turns purple here. And so that's the computer telling us, hey, I know that this is a function. I already have code for this. Just tell me what I need to do. And to continue that, we'll put an open parenthesis. We'll also put some quotation marks because we're going to be typing a word, and we'll talk about why that's important later. But then we're just going to say hello world. And that's pretty much it. So to run it to the computer, there's a couple different things you can do. I personally like to highlight the code that I'm going to run, even if it's the only thing in there. It just lets me know that I know everything that I'm running and there's nothing, hidden or something that I can't see that's also running. So I'm just going to highlight this code, and then, and then you can either hit this play button up here and that'll run it. And here you can see it runs the file and then says hello world. Or what I like to do a lot, I like to do a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So you can just highlight it again and then hit Control Enter, and that'll also run it. It does, as you can see, it does run differently, but for the purpose of this video, you don't have to worry about that. It does the same thing. Sweet. So now that we've worked with our first function, we've created our first line of code, let's also work with numbers a bit. So we're going to keep those parentheses, but instead we're going to put a 5 in there. And we're doing this because, as you can see, it's basically the same thing. We're just going to highlight it, run it, and 5 is going to be printed out. However, the important thing here to note is that Python does not see this as an actual number, and that's because it's in these parentheses right here, and so it's going to see it as a word instead. It actually sees it as what's called a string, which is a data type, or a variable type. We're not going to worry about that. We'll talk about that in another video. But basically, if you put it in these parentheses, it's going to see it as a string or a word. So to make it see it as a number, we just have to get rid of those quotation marks, which is pretty easy. Just backspace those, highlight, and then do the same thing, Control Enter, or you click the play button, and here you can see it looks the same. The output looks the same. However, these are two completely different things to the computer, and we can tell that because if we want to run math, which we'll do a quick little math problem in a second, it'll show up a little bit differently. So let's say we wanted to say, instead of 5, we wanted to say 5 plus 5. And again, don't worry about learning about the math. We'll work with algebra and the different functions and how they interact with each other in another video. But for the purpose of this video, just know that if we say print 5 plus 5, it's going to do that math for us and then print the result. So if I highlight all that again, hit Control Enter, you can see it does the math. Perfect. 10, which is 5 plus 5. However, that's a little bit different if we put those those quotation marks there. So if we say 5 plus 5 and then do the same thing, it prints out 55, which you can see it just added the two numbers together like as words and just stuck them together. So it's really important to know what types of variables or what types of data you're working with, or what really the numbers and words and the differences between them when you're working in Python, because it can have some pretty different results. Other than that, that's pretty much it for this video. Like I said, we're just going to start off with the basics here, and then we'll move on and use these into other parts of the language. But feel free to mess around with this print function. If you want to, you can learn a couple of other functions that are native to to vanilla Python and see how they work. Or you can kind of mess around with print and see what breaks it, what doesn't, see how it works. It's kind of fun to do it that way. But other than that, that's it for this video. Feel free to move on or code some more. But thank you for listening and have fun.